2001 graduate who started Homage Clothing Company in the basement of his parents' house, Ryan is a first-rate entrepreneur in Columbus. Young, enthusiastic, reflective, creative, he has grown his company to Cleveland and Cincinnati with future possibilities in Indianapolis, Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Chicago. Here at Columbus Academy, he was a member of the first club inaugural year of bowling in Ohio. He also ran the 4x400 at the state meet and came in 15th. His claim to fame here, I have to tell you, is now a historic fashion decision that he made. He wore a suit that he made of duct tape to his senior prom. Please welcome back Brian Vesler.
Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome our international audience, since we are live streaming this today. An 87-year-old grandfather who is watching live from London wearing a shirt and a tie. Also, I know we live in Columbus, but man, what an exciting time to be a Cleveland sports fan. The Cavaliers are in the NBA Finals, and it's been 52 years since the city of Cleveland has won a professional sports championship. But let me start out by addressing the elephant in the room. Why am I standing here before you wearing a Columbus Academy middle school choir sweater? Well, it's because the 1996 middle school choir was the greatest of all time. Sort of like the 95-96 Chicago Bulls, only we didn't win an NBA championship. My buddy Bob Turton was like Michael Jordan. I was like Scottie Pippen. I think we were a middle school choir of destiny. Wait a second, the 95-96 Chicago Bulls? You graduating seniors weren't even born yet. You'll have to ask your parents or Mr. Exline about the 95-96 Chicago Bulls. Throughout my time at Academy, from 5th grade through high school, I always tried to maintain a sense of humor about things. I posted flyers around campus comparing track coach Bob Kirk to legendary American distance runner Steve Prefontaine. They both had big, bushy 1970s-style mustaches. When learning Spanish for the first time, I told Senora Chavez that I had, quote, cheese in my shoes. At the time, it seemed like the best way to use the 3 new vocabulary words I had just learned: have, cheese, and shoes. The funny thing is, I sent her an email a few weeks ago saying, "Hola, Senora Chavez, tengo queso en mis zapatos." Not to give any underclassmen any ideas, but I remember installing a computer program that allowed me to remotely control other computers on the Academy network. My former math teacher, Dan Gehring, could never figure out why he received messages saying, quote, "The radiation shield on your monitor is about to expire. Please step back 5 feet." What I would give today to have seen the look on his face. But back to the middle school choir sweater. My junior year, our European history teacher, Mr. Izzo, approached me one day and said something along the lines of, "You think you're a rebel now, Mr. Vesler, but I predict that you'll be back at Academy one day wearing a sweater vest." Mr. Izzo, it turns out you were only partially correct. Yes, I may be back at Academy giving a speech, but I'm wearing a sweater, not a sweater vest. I want to start out by congratulating the Columbus Academy class of 2016. From what I hear, you guys and girls are a bunch of rock stars. How about the Tremor X team of Alex, Mehdi, Savannah, and Varun developing a non-invasive solution to tremors for their classmate? Or the 29 seniors earning national merit recognition? And perhaps the most rock star accomplishment in my eyes was the first ever senior lock-in in which students played video games, watched movies, played musical instruments, and even had pancakes for breakfast the next morning. It's truly an honor to be here with you today. And congratulations to the parents of these amazing students. I can only imagine just how proud of these little munchkins you are. Without you parents, today wouldn't be possible. From morning carpool in lower school through those awkward middle school years to finally handing over the car keys in high school, your encouragement, guidance, and love is something that deserves acknowledgement on a special day like today. It's hard to believe that it's been 15 years since I graduated from Academy. In some ways, I hardly recognize the place. Many of my teachers have retired. Look at all these new buildings. The cafeteria doesn't even have soda anymore. But as cliche as it sounds, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Amazing junior speeches are happening, like Nida Pervez talking about what it's like to be a first-generation American, or Jack Mills exploring the notion of thankfulness. Teams are bringing home state championship trophies, like the 2015 girls lacrosse team. Bexley is still our rival. And Mr. Exline is still talking about the movie Trading Places in his econ classes. And of course, Columbus Academy remains an amazing place. The beautiful campus and rich academic tradition are an important part of it, but what makes Academy so special in my eyes are the people. Folks like Mr. Exline, Mr. Davis, Dr. Larson, Mr. Warren, Mrs. Hogan, Mr. Kirk, Senora Chavez. As an 18-year-old, I didn't fully grasp the passion and commitment that you bring to campus every day. Sure, helping students get good grades, good SAT scores, and into good colleges is part of the job, but 15 years later, I recognize the most important thing teachers do here is help kids to become better people. So I want to thank my teachers for the innumerable ways in which you've touched my life and the lives of these students. I feel like, in a way, I'm up here today because you always encourage me and help me to celebrate who I am and what makes me unique. The career path that I've embarked upon is a direct reflection of my personality, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be doing something that I love. And although I don't know some of you newer teachers, I'm sure you're here doing the same thing for students every day. Besides my teachers, there's two other people that I'd like to thank who are very responsible for me being up here today, my parents. In particular, I want to thank my dad for the greatest bit of business advice ever. Buy low, sell high. He is a true retail visionary. I'd like to thank my mom for being the first ever Homage employee, acting as a shipping clerk by taking t-shirt orders to the post office. Once I started officially hiring people, I realized that not everyone works for free. In all seriousness, to my mom and dad, I just want to say that I love you and that I'll never be able to thank you for all that you've done to help me along the way. All right, so now is when stuff gets real. Now is when I give you some of the greatest advice ever. Now's when I tell you about the pitfalls to avoid in your college years, how to choose the right career path, and how to convince your parents to give you free rent and food after college. Nope, not here to do that. Well, maybe I can help with the free rent part. The hardest part of standing up here as a 33-year-old giving a commencement speech is that in some ways, I feel just as naive and inexperienced as I did when I was 18. Every day, I'm learning something new, running up against some of my shortcomings, or feeling uncertain about what the future has in store for me. So rather than use my 10 minutes up here to try to come up with the most perfect advice for you, graduating seniors, I'm going to share 3 things that are meaningful to me. Keep some of these things in mind as you navigate the complicated, challenging, and exciting years that follow. Mr. Joel Davis, my 9th grade biology teacher, who is here in attendance, will get a kick out of this story. In a classic study done by Emory University scientist Franz de Waal, de Waal trained monkeys to essentially use stones as a kind of currency, trading each one for a delicious slice of cucumber. The monkeys were happy with all the trading until de Waal started giving some monkeys juicy grapes instead of cucumbers. The monkeys who were offered the regular old cucumber went bananas when they started comparing themselves to others. What this study tells me is that it's inherently human to compare ourselves to others. And while comparing and contrasting isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world, it does present some challenges. My buddy, Adam Levine, who is a 2013 Academy graduate who some of you may know, while catching up with Adam a few months ago over coffee, he shared with me a story about his senior art project. Both of Adam's sisters are talented artists, and he's always wanted to be good like them. The harder he tried, however, he never felt good enough. When it came time for the senior art show, Adam wanted to make something impressive. Halfway through his attempt at painting a gorgeous landscape, however, he realized that what he was doing wasn't bringing him satisfaction. In fact, it only reminded him of his own perceived shortcomings as an artist. Recognizing the need to make a change, Adam asked Mr. Block for a gigantic canvas and went to work. A week later, Adam had created his personal masterpiece, a massive painting of dinosaurs dancing on the moon with the rings of Saturn in the distance. What I love about this story is that it's such a simple and fun reminder of something that I have to remind myself of every day, and that is to not compare myself to others. It can happen all the time and we don't even think about it. Why am I so terrible at being an artist? Why am I stuck at my desk when so-and-so is out partying with rock stars? Why am I eating ramen noodles when my brother is eating a delicious Chipotle burrito? I do realize the questions I just asked are a bit on the silly side, but the fact of the matter is, the more we compare ourselves to others, we start to feel worse and worse about who we are and what we have. We can feel like we're never good enough. In today's world, we know when our friends and colleagues are windsurfing, sunbathing, eating fancy foods, attending music festivals, and, hang on a second, drinking non-fat chai lattes with 2 pumps of cinnamon, dolce, peppermint, raspberry flavoring. The reality is that we're all different. We have different talents, different abilities, and different skills. It's important to remember to be yourself and to do things in your own unique way, irrespective of what others are up to. I mean, why compare yourself to others when you can, give me a second here, when you can paint dinosaurs? Let me just fold my choir sweater here. I don't want to wrinkle it. It's such a precious possession. I bet when you woke up this morning, you had no idea that you'd be attending a fashion show in addition to a high school commencement. A huge inspiration of mine is Steve Jobs. In his 2005 Stanford commencement speech that you may have seen on YouTube, Jobs talks about following his curiosity and intuition and how it was so important to finding success at Apple. At the end of the speech, he urges the students in attendance to stay hungry, stay foolish. I didn't realize it at the time, but during college and afterwards, I did some foolish things with clothing and sneakers. Well, because it was fun and exciting and I didn't know any better. And that turned out to be a great thing. During college, I studied in Pamplona, Spain. Many have heard of Pamplona because it's where the running of the bulls takes place every summer. While exploring the old part of the city one day, I happened upon a shoe store with vintage Nike shoes everywhere. I had never before seen brand new Air Jordans from 1992 or 1970s Nike waffle trainers still in the box. I was seriously in sneaker heaven. The rest of my time in Spain was spent learning how to export large shipments of shoes back to the US. My professors didn't know what to make of it. After I graduated from college, I went to Costa Rica with my friend and fellow Academy alum, Jeremy Summer. There, in San Jose, the capital, we found thrift stores loaded with valuable vintage clothing. Even though we had gone there to hang out on the beach, Jeremy and I ended up selling vintage clothing on eBay from youth hostels. We would carry these large bags of clothing around the city, and the locals couldn't figure out what the heck we were doing. When I came back from Costa Rica to start being an adult, I continued to buy and sell vintage clothing online because it was so much fun. I ended up founding Homage in 2007 because after a while, I realized that my true passion lay in stories and storytelling, and that clothing was a way I could communicate these stories. A common misconception is that after college, I somehow had it all figured out and knew exactly that I wanted to start a clothing company. In fact, a lot of people are surprised to hear that I actually majored in Spanish. I think in today's world, we keep hearing about how important it is to find that one true passion or purpose in life. It can be overwhelming and daunting. I'm sure some of you seniors are sitting over there wondering about your true purpose or passion. I know I was at your age. I recently read an article written by a Cornell professor who has interviewed more than 1,000 people over the age of 65 because the wisdom of older folks can help us see the world through a different lens. And this wisdom is something that I want to share with you today. Instead of trying to have one silver bullet purpose, we should aim to have purposes, plural. The reason why is because over the course of our lives, our priorities, our interests, and our circumstances will change. For me, I was on a path majoring in Spanish when, over the course of a few years, a love of clothing and storytelling emerged. Seniors, try not to let the pressure or stress of finding your true passion overwhelm you. Each of you is on a unique journey that can take a lot of time and a lot of trial and error to discover. Like Steve Jobs, I think the best way to discover your own story is to stay hungry, stay foolish. The third and final topic that I want to talk to you about today is the notion of learning to cope with vulnerability, uncertainty, anxiety, fear, and shame. To be honest, it's something that I didn't fully understand until after Homage started to grow. Yes, I had found this incredible passion and career, but I was so immersed in it that I lost my perspective. I had the expectation that everything had to be perfect, and that I was the only one who knew how to make it perfect. Without flawless execution, I thought to myself, we would fail. I started to do things like internalize some of the negative feedback we received on social media. I put an insane amount of pressure on myself in trying to emulate some of the most creative people out there. I began insisting that my employees deliver flawless work, not realizing that everyone isn't going to be as passionate and determined to succeed as me. The more I strived to be the best, though, the more I set myself up for failure. There's a TED Talk from Dr. Brené Brown, author of a book called Daring Greatly: How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Lead. In her research, Dr. Brown has uncovered something that helps us to develop a strong sense of love and belonging, and that is having the courage to be imperfect. Ambition, progress, and growth are amazing things, but that doesn't mean that every idea or every action has to be perfect. As a Columbus Academy alum, I can remember the pressure of getting good grades and going to a good college. I can remember the influence of a phrase like, "in quest of the best." It took me some time to realize that what I was missing with Homage wasn't perfection, but instead the courage to fail, make a mistake, or be criticized. With all three, you learn something really valuable, and it's so important to pay attention to that. Seniors, along the way, there's going to be some bumps in the road. You might fail a class. You could be fired from a job. It's hard to know exactly how vulnerability will manifest itself in the future. But like the great Bob Marley once said, you find that being vulnerable is the only way to allow your heart to feel true pleasure. The final item in today's show and tell doesn't actually have a graphic. It's a blank t-shirt, a blank canvas to represent the fact that you, seniors, have an amazing opportunity ahead to discover the stories that mean the most to you. And over the course of your lives, you'll wear plenty of t-shirts on the way to discovering who you really are. Along the way, just don't forget the three things that I mentioned earlier. Number 1, to paint dinosaurs. Number 2, to stay hungry and foolish. And number 3, embrace vulnerability as you construct your own story. Thank you, and congratulations to the Columbus Academy Class of 2016.